graders, today we're going to do a lab called Dunkin For Density. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the volume and the mass of these three containers, which have three different substances in, and we're going to see if they will either sink or if they're either going to float. First thing we're going to do is find the mass of each one. The first one, canister 1, we put it on there, and the mass is 25.9 grams. We find the mass of number 2, which is going to be 18.5 grams. And then we find the mass of number 3, which is 7.4 grams. Next, we're going to find the volume of the three canisters. We're only going to find the volume of one of the canisters. Why would we only need to find the volume of just one of them? The reason why we only need to find one of them is because they are all the same size. They take up the same amount of space. And to do this, we're going to use water displacement like we did on the previous example with the marbles, that we're going to find the volume of this. First, we find that we have 20 milliliters of water inside the graduated cylinder. We're going to slowly tip this in, and the change goes from 20 to 40 milliliters. So what is the volume of this canister? What's that? One. Next, we need to find the density. Remember, sixth graders, how do we feel about density? Remember, we heart density. We love it. So the formula, remember, is if we take this heart here and then we draw a line across of it, and then what we'll do is it really means that we take the mass and we divide it by the volume. And that's how you find the density. I would like you to do that right now. The calculations for each of them, you take the mass of our object, divide it by 20, which they're all going to be 20 because it's the same canister, and then write it into 2 decimal places. And we'll come back to see your answer in just a second. Now that you have your density, you're going to see if it's going to sink or float. You're going to use an educated guess. Remember, the hint for you is that the density of water is 1.0 grams per milliliter. 1. So we're going to take canister 1. We're going to see what happens to canister 1. Canister 1 is filled with sand, and as we put it in there, it's going to sink. If we take canister 2 and we put it in there, it's going to float. And on canister 3, as you know, if you look at your answers, it's definitely lower than the other ones. It's also going to float. So, what can we say about density, their numbers, and if it's going to float or not? Remember, think about water. Water is 1.0 grams per milliliter. In conclusion, sixth graders, just so you know, if the density is greater than 1.0 grams per milliliter, an object will sink. If the density is less than 1.0 grams per milliliter, it's going to float. Now that we're done with that, what I'd like you to do for the final thing you need to do is on the back side of the activity, there is some questions that you need to do. Please answer these completely, and we'll go over them in class when we come back.